Welcome to the PUCV, and I would like to welcome you all. Actually, in this conference, we have people coming from the 5 continents. We have people from Africa, Asia, Oceania, Europe, and Latin America. It's very important for us. I would like to welcome you all, but also the people who are seeing us through a live streaming transmission. We're transmitting via Facebook and Twitter. So welcome to everyone in different countries also seeing this opening ceremony. We would like it to share not only with you, but also with different colleagues in different places too. I would like to say many things as a welcome, as a thank you for the opportunity to have this conference here. But before I talk, because I'm going to be the moderator of this plenary session, I would like the Dean of the faculty to give you some words, some welcome words. And then John, the chair of the LLRN, will give you also some welcome words. So please, Alan.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Un saludo afectuoso a los directivos del Law Research Network, profesores e investigadores, en nombre de la Facultad de Derecho y la Escuela de Derecho de la Pontificia, Universidad Católica de Valparaíso, le doy la más cordial de las bienvenidas. Para nosotros es un honor poder acoger este encuentro tan importante para la reflexión en un ámbito del derecho que nos preciamos de cultivar y que es muy relevante para el desarrollo de nuestros países. Agradezco en primer lugar a la red la confianza depositada en nosotros para realizar este cuarto encuentro de esta red de investigadores. El primero fue en Barcelona, luego en Ámsterdam y luego en Toronto, y nos correspondió a nosotros y estamos muy contentos de poder acogerlos. Creo que las cifras de este evento dan cuenta de su éxito. Tenemos cerca de 300 participantes inscritos, 47 mesas de reunión, paneles en paralelo, un número muy elevado. Tenemos representantes, investigadores, como decía Pablo, de todos los continentes, de lugares distantes como India, Indonesia, Polonia, Hungría, vi ahí, ¿no? en los listados, Rusia, España, Argentina, Brasil, lo que nos pone muy contentos. Creo que para nosotros y para el mundo el desarrollo del derecho laboral, la investigación de los temas principales del derecho laboral es una cuestión fundamental. En un momento en que el capital se mueve con mucha rapidez, las inversiones aparecen y desaparecen con mucha volatilidad, es un momento en que también los derechos y los estatutos jurídicos de los trabajadores están en peligro. Creo que en ese sentido se requiere largas jornadas, una buena reflexión para ir construyendo aquellas reglas que permiten asegurar una convivencia, un trabajo, una vida digna para todas las personas en todas las partes del mundo. No podemos aquí trabajar de manera aislada. La velocidad de los cambios, la movilidad, la fragilidad del movimiento de las industrias, ¿no? Requieren el desarrollo y este tipo de encuentros en los cuales se conversa, se analiza, se revisa, se examina los temas más importantes del derecho laboral. Les reitero mis agradecimientos a los organizadores de este encuentro. Para nosotros, repito, es un honor poder acogerlo y espero que estos días que siguen sean muy fructíferos en el intercambio de ideas y de investigaciones relevantes para nuestro derecho y para el derecho del trabajo en el mundo. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Howe, and I'm the chair of the Labour Law Research Network. And it's truly a pleasure to welcome you all here to the beautiful city of Valparaíso for the 4th Labour Law Research Network Conference. And I particularly want to acknowledge the Pontificia, Universidad, Católica de Valparaíso for hosting the conference, and to the Dean of the Faculty of Law, Professor Alan Bronfman, thank you very much for your welcome. The LLRN was established in 2011 to be an international network of centres, institutes and scholars dedicated to the study of labour law. We now have over 70 centres, labour law centres, from around the world who are formally members of the network, which is really exciting. Every year we grow, the numbers of labour law centres grow and the field grows, and it's been really wonderful to see as chair of the network. The key activity of the network to achieve this goal has been the biennial conference of the network to bring together scholars to talk about labour law in its broadest sense. And I'm very proud that this is now the fourth of these conferences, given the humble beginnings of a meeting of different scholars and centre directors back there in 2011. And I'm also proud that this is after three fantastic conferences in Barcelona and in Amsterdam and then in Toronto, that we're having our first conference in the Southern Hemisphere and in the Global South. From the beginning, I think one of the core values of the LLRN was to be a truly global organisation that engage with issues of relevance, not just to scholars from the global north, but also the global south. And so in deciding to have this fourth conference here in Valparaíso, in Chile, this was seen as an important step for the network to become that truly global organisation, and hence the subtitle of this conference, a global conversation on labour law. Important to bring scholars. Many of you are from Europe and North America and see each other regularly on that circuit of conferences in those regions, to bring you down to engage with scholars who might be looking at some common issues in the Southern Hemisphere, but who might be looking at very different questions as well, given the different contexts that might apply down here. But also important for scholars in the Southern Hemisphere and the Global South in particular, to engage with those scholars from the Global North. So I think that's why it's been so important for us to have this conference, and why it's really pleasing to see this full hall of people here ready for this fantastic conference program that we're going to see. I particularly want to thank Pablo Ariano, who's led the organisation of the conference here at PUCV, ably assisted by Andres Aymada, and also want to thank the steering committee of the network, Diamond Ashiagbor, Elena Gerasimova, Brian Langell, Sophie Robin Olivier and Kamala Sankaran, along with Pablo, who've been so helpful to me in supporting Pablo to organise this conference. So once again, I say welcome to everyone, and I look forward to seeing you all across the next 2 and a bit days engaging in this global conversation in labour law. Thank you.
Well, thank you both, Alan and John, for your words, for your welcome words. Just to clarify, the image that you're seeing on the screen is actually the image we're sending and transmitting through Facebook and Twitter. So if you are in the image, you are somewhere around the globe also now. I don't want to explain myself a lot about my personal sensations of the conference. I just want to add, which is a little bit strange, to start a conference by giving many thank yous. we should thank at the end and evaluate at the end, not at the beginning. But I think it's a good opportunity to thank the university, the faculty, for the opportunity to have these conferences here. It's not easy for labor lawyers or labor academic in Latin America to develop this kind of event. Would like to thank John and the support from the chair, also from the steering committee, and some other colleagues such as Brian, who shared his experience in the previous conference, and Guy Davidos also was involved in sharing some experience. And I would like to thank a lot, I don't know if he's here, Andres Ahumada, who helped me a lot, and all the other students that you see in the registration, that all this kind of work, but it means a lot to our organization of this conference. So thank you to all of you. To follow this ceremony, we can call it ceremony, we're gonna divide it in two parts. The first part, we're gonna give the Bob Keppel Award. So I would like to please come up the presenters of the award, Alan Bogg and Mia Roman, and one of the winners, Professor Mark Friedland, please to. Unfortunately, as you see, Professor Anne Numhausen-Henning is not here today. There was a big problem with the connecting flight in Paris. She will be here tomorrow morning. We're trying to arrange a time so she can deliver a few words of acceptance of the award. But instead, Mia is going to present anyway the award, and I would like to ask John, so if you can come and then receive the award in behalf of Anne at the time, please. So we're going to start for the first award winner, and I will ask Alan to present the winner.
Don't worry, I'm not got a PowerPoint. I didn't print the speech off, so I've brought this along. So yeah. I'm also horrified to realise that this is being broadcast. I've usually got beautiful skin, and I woke up 2 days ago and I got this terrible spot right in the middle of my face. And I thought, it's fine, you're amongst friends, nobody's going to see it. And then, yeah, it's now broke. If I'd have known that, I would have got some makeup. But anyway, it's not about my spot today. It's not even about me. It's about Professor Friedland. It's my great pleasure to say some words on Professor Friedland's contribution to the discipline of labour law. Now, on any view, Mark's scholarly achievements have been remarkable. A graduate of University College London in 1966, Mark went on to Oxford to undertake graduate studies in labour law. As a doctoral student of Otto Kahn-Freund, Professor Friedland produced his first monograph, The Contract of Employment, in 1976. As the first systematic treatise on the common law contract of employment, crafted in the genre of worker protective labour law, it was a remarkable and original point of departure for a young scholar. Few people would have started there, and it's a testament to the man that that's where he began. At that time, few UK labour lawyers would have troubled to explore the dismal swamp of the English common law. Now, to a certain extent, it's still a dismal swamp, but it's not quite as dismal as it used to be. And I think part of the reason for that is that you have scholars of Professor Friedland's standing and imagination who took the trouble to try and make something of what was there from the perspective of worker protection. And it was an unusual place to start because in the mid-1970s in the UK, this was at a time when Karl Freund was intellectually dominant and Bill Wedderburn, and the intellectual focus of UK labour law was to be found in collective bargaining, inflation policies, and the reform of strike laws. And this was the very high point of collective laissez-faire. Little had been written on the individual elements of the subject. That Mark Friedland did so with such flair, producing a debut work of such enduring significance, is testament to his position as one of our most visionary thinkers. Now, this marked a lifelong engagement with the contracts of employment, and it led to 3 further treatises examining personal work relations. His most recent work has been both collaborative and comparative in scope, developing analytical perspectives on personal work relations rooted in both civilian and common law traditions. While his criticism of the judges has been astute and withering where this was deserved, and it has been deserved often, it's the mark of the man that even his most acerbic criticism manages to be generous and gracious, a rare gift indeed, and one that he has never lost even in the heat of the disputation. And I can absolutely tell you that that's true. The 2 of us participated in one of the most bruising encounters I've ever had on Friday at UCL, where we had a debate with the Justice of the UK Supreme Court. And Mark retained his equanimity much better than I did. I fear that means that any career for me in the upper judiciary in the English court system is now finished. But I don't mind, that's fine. This extensive body of work on personal work relations would have been achievement enough and would have been justification enough for us to be here today talking about his work. But it doesn't stop there. Across his long and distinguished career, he has engaged in many productive collaborations with other scholars and in recent times with younger scholars. In the UK, he is perhaps best known as one half of the famous double act Davis and Friedland. Not a music hall duo, that's what they sound like, but in fact 2 of the most influential scholars of UK labour law in the modern era. Between them, they made Oxford a powerhouse of labour law for many decades, and between them, they produced a succession of imaginative books on the evolving structure of UK labour law, and in particular, the role of legislation in understanding the development of labour law. Now, of course, that was then, and this is now. The powerhouse mantle is now held by the University of Bristol, but it's testament to how wonderful Mark is that he harbours no ill will whatsoever, and he still lets me stand here and talk about his achievements. Now, Mark's retirement from his teaching post in Oxford did not mute his intellectual curiosity and imagination. On the contrary, he has continued to push himself and the intellectual frontiers of the discipline beyond comfort zones and into new and uncharted territories. Recent years have seen seminal works on migration at work and criminality at work. These collaborative books are at the cutting edge of contemporary labour law scholarship. Once again, he's been prescient in identifying migration regimes and criminal justice practices as new sites of regulatory activity in the labour market. And he's leading the way in providing intellectual mapping of uncharted territory. He is also, and this is rather sad that this is where we are, has been involved in work on the rise of populism as a labour law phenomenon and the future of the UK constitutional order as it's strained under the tectonic pressures of Brexit. While these recent developments have been a source of great sadness to Mark, the recognition of the gravity of our times has never diminished his dignity in the fray of sometimes difficult public debates on the rise of right-wing populism. His commitment to decent work and decent politics at a time of rising nationalism and authoritarianism is a reminder to all of us that this is no time to withdraw from the fray. This isn't just an intellectual exercise. Neutrality may have its place in public life, but sometimes, and the time is now, we have to choose sides. It's also a reminder of what is now at stake in many places across the world, and that the fate of freedom in work and freedom in politics cannot be easily disaggregated. This is Mark the scholar. Then there is Mark the friend, mentor, teacher, doctoral supervisor. He has mentored many generations of younger labour lawyers with great kindness, warmth, humility, and generosity of spirit. These qualities have permeated his scholarship and his way of being in the world. His work has been animated by a passionate concern for the vulnerable, the marginalised, and the oppressed, and the constructive role of law in protecting the vulnerable and providing for decency and freedom in working life. Indeed, these things can be taken to be the enduring values of labour law itself. As such, there can be no more fitting opening to our 2019 Labour Law Research Network than the award of this Bob Keppel Lifetime Achievement Award to Professor Mark Friedland. Thank you.
Dear colleagues and friends, I thank Professor Alan Bogg, after Paul Davis, to whom he referred, now one of my main collaborators, colleagues, and academic friends, for the enormously generous words which he has said about me. Too generous, I'm sure, but that's in the nature of these occasions. I now have the opportunity to say a brief word of acknowledgement and thanks for the Bob Keppel Award, and more generally for this welcome to Valparaíso. Let me start by speaking of the welcome to Valparaíso. This welcome has been truly magnificent, and I especially appreciate the encouragement and support which I've been given with the arrangements for my visit. I offer huge thanks to the university, especially in the persons of Professor Pablo Arellano and the Dean of the Law Faculty, and to Professor John Howe and the other members of the organizing committee of the Labour Law Research Network. I'll say something more about the significance of the location of the conference in Valparaíso in a moment. But let me before that say something about the Bob Keppel Award and how honored I am to be one of this year's recipients of it. It's a special pleasure for me to share the award with Professor Anne Numhauser-Henning. In the circumstances that she cannot join us until tomorrow, I should like to regard myself, if I may, as speaking on behalf of both of us today. So, hoping that she might share my view, but in any case, describing what receiving this award has meant to me, I'm here to say that it has filled me with a certain sense of pride, though not for the reasons which you might imagine when I say that. You might imagine that I mean that I'm proud to have been chosen as an individual for this award, but although that is largely true, I do not mean precisely that, because I know that the selection committee has a difficult task of selecting among equals, and I am very conscious that other equally good selections could have been made for this award. Instead, I'm proud of having received this award because I think that it represents an intention to identify labour law scholarship as a collective and shared heritage which is gradually being passed down the generations of labor law scholars. Thus, in previous award ceremonies, there has always been a reference back to the earlier scholars from whom the recipients derived their inspiration. I remember that Professor Harry Arthurs and Bob Keppel spoke in Barcelona about the influence upon them of Professor Otto Kahn-Freund, who was also my own mentor and source of ideas. When Professor Manfred Weiss and Professor Judge Silvana Chiara received the award in Amsterdam, there was much reference to Professor Hugo Zinsheimer, who had spent the final years of his life there. When Professors Catherine Stone and Kazuo Sugeno received the award in Toronto, it had been named after and in honor of Bob Keppel. And so this sense of succession continues, and we have to thank for that the leading organizers of the Labor Law Research Network and of the previous 3 conferences. I've mentioned Professor John Howe, but I'm also thinking specially of Professors Guy Davidoff, Brian Langiel, Julia Lopez, and Evert Verhelp. I also like to think that this sense of the transferring of a heritage of labor law scholarship is animating those specially involved in the opening of this conference. I've referred to the roles of Professors John Howe and Pablo Arellano, but may I also refer to our presenters, Professors Mia Ronmar and Alan Bogg, when I speak of that. And also, more generally, to the enormous assembly of labor law scholars who are contributing papers to this conference and whose presentations I'm looking forward to hearing over the next 2 days. This leads me on to the further reflection that this sharing and transfer of the heritage of labor law scholarship is not only a privilege, but also a duty and a responsibility which we bear between us. With what attitude and in what consciousness should we be seeking to discharge that responsibility? I have 1 or 2 very slight suggestions. Firstly, I think we have to be clear that the need to be developing a progressive body of labor law and labor law scholarship, which has always been very great, has never been greater than it is now. 100 years on from the founding of the ILO, its mission has by no means been fulfilled, and the achievement of its foundational commitment to the development of international labor standards by tripartite deliberation and action by and between national governments, employers' organizations, and trade unions remains as pressing and challenging a task as it has ever been. It is a mission which was restated and reanimated in 1944 by the Declaration of Philadelphia. But our colleague, Professor Alain Soupiot, has eloquently written of how the spirit of Philadelphia, as manifested at that time, has since been overborne in what he describes as the battle between social justice and the total market. And if we think of Britain and some of the other countries of Western Europe and the United States as the principal architects of the Declaration of Philadelphia, then I'm here to emphasize to you how the dark shadows of populism, extreme nationalism, and protectionism are again falling over those countries, not least over Brexit Britain, whose labour laws and policies I once felt so proud to represent. This brings me back to my starting point, which was to speak about the significance of the location of this conference in Valparaíso. Despite that lovely name, I don't think of this as an earthly paradise for labour law. But I do think that it is splendid for the Labour Law Research Network to come here and to be more immediately exposed to the very active and quite flourishing tradition of Latin American labour law. I am, for example, greatly impressed by the newly published work of Professors Gamonal and Rosado, which is clearly going to provide an optic upon that tradition for English-speaking viewers, and which offers its principles as the basis of a critique of the current state of labour law in the United States and beyond. So perhaps we can look forward to emerging from this conference with a sense of what constitutes not the spirit of Philadelphia, but the spirit of Valparaíso for labour law. It would be presumptuous in the extreme for me, having been here for less than 24 hours, to begin to suggest what the spirit of Valparaíso might look like. Can I instead conclude by reading a few lines from Pablo Neruda's wonderful poem of Valparaíso? I apologize for doing so in English translation, which can't do full justice to it, but will convey some idea of its beauty. He says of and to Valparaíso that it, by which I think he means earthquake and tempest, it couldn't knock you down because upon your southern chest are tattooed struggle, hope, solidarity, and happiness, like anchors that withstand the waves of the earth. That really does seem to be a fine message which is addressed to Valparaíso, but which we could also apply to labour law and the study of labour law. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your welcome and for your attention.
Thank you very much for your words, Professor Friedland. Congratulations again on the prize. Thank you, Professor Bock, for presenting it. Mia, please.
Dear friends and colleagues, if only Anne was here. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to present Professor Emerita Anne Numhauser-Henning from the Faculty of Law at Lund University with the Bob Keppel Award for Lifetime Achievement in Labour Law. She is a friend and we have collaborated closely for many years. Anne Numhauser-Henning's research interests are impressively broad, and throughout her career she has in fruitful and innovative ways explored links between labor law, non-discrimination law, social welfare law, and elder law. She adopts a socio-legal approach and analyzes the function of law in relation to labor market and societal developments. She has a talent for spotting new, important labor market trends and critically analyzing them from a labor law perspective. This was the case with the increase in atypical employment and flexibilization of work in the early 1980s, which was the subject of her doctoral thesis presented in 1984. This was also the case with the growing importance and expansion of non-discrimination law in Europe in the late 1990s and onwards. And more recently, this was the case with the challenges of the aging population and the importance of elder law and intergenerational perspectives. Ann Numhauser-Henning's scholarly career is characterized by international collaboration and comparative perspectives, and she has engaged in legal scientific discourses at Nordic, European, and global levels. She publishes not only in Swedish and English, but also in Spanish. And I believe that one of her very first own encounters with the global labor law community took place when she, as a young scholar, attended the World Congress of the International Society of Labor and Social Security Law in Caracas in 1985. At that point, she surprised and impressed many with an engaging plenary session made in Spanish. She has collaborated with colleagues in Europe and all over the world, not least with colleagues in Chile. She has conducted research on Chilean and South American labor law and been a regular visitor, both teaching and researching. Ann Numhauser-Henning is a scholarly leader and innovator, and one might even venture to say something of an entrepreneur. She has initiated new and innovative research projects, such as the Norma Research Program on normative developments within the law of the social dimension, which celebrated its 20th anniversary a couple of years ago. She brings people together, scholars from different countries and scholars at different stages of their careers. And these long-lasting, both scholarly and personal friendships were reflected in the Festschrift that she received 2 years ago. Ann Numhauser-Henning has served as an important mentor and role model to younger colleagues, and she is a pioneer in the field of gender equality. Not only is she an outstanding scholar in the field of non-discrimination law, but she has also promoted gender equality in academia in very practical and effective ways, as a research group coordinator at university level, as pro-vice chancellor, and as an expert to governments and the European Commission. And it is a tremendous joy for us to present Ann with this award, and we extend our warmest congratulations all over the way to Paris.